Today is the day we are finally here. We are going to be doing the last big declutter of the year. Today we're going to be decluttering my eyeshadow palettes. Just like I did in my summer declutters, I am going to split this up into two parts so that we're not here for like 2 hours. The first part will be the palettes up here. So these here, and then I'm also going to include in that part the palettes that are up here on the vanity, and then the second part will be the ones in the drawer. And my 3 eyeshadow palette drawers right here. So we're going to go through all of these. I have 142 palettes altogether, which is not bad considering the fact that I did do a summer declutter. But I do have some more palettes that we can go on ahead and get rid of so that we can start over fresh going into the new year. Let's go on ahead and jump into part 1. Welcome to part 1. As I mentioned, we have 142 palettes altogether. In this stack alone, there are 72. I don't know how many I'm actually going to declutter. A lot of these are my NOMAD palettes, and then like some palettes that I bought strictly, for collecting purposes. So let's jump in and see what we can get rid of. Like I said, I don't know how many that's going to be in this particular group. I'm filming this part on the floor with the natural lighting, so hopefully there is enough light and you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to start pulling from the top and just take it one palette at a time. So first we have the Pure X Raw Beauty Crispy palette. I will be hanging on to this one. This is a two-sided palette. The first side, you can see, is more neutral, and then you take it and you flip it over. And the other side, this side's a little more colorful. Not my favorite formula. This was, I think, one of my first times ever using a pure eyeshadow formula, but I love Raw Beauty Crispy, so we're gonna keep it. The Sugar High palette from Menagerie. This is my first time ever using a Menagerie palette. It is absolutely beautiful. As you can see, the colors, the tones are stunning. I did have a little bit of difficulty with the mattes where this palette is concerned, but I do want to hang on to it, work with it a little bit more. If I find I'm still having difficulty, then I may declutter this in the future, but for now we're going to hang on to it. The Glam Light Red Velvet palette. It's a little cupcake on the front. This one is a really pretty color story. The formulas in here are really, really nice too. I'm going to hang on to this one. I'm also going to hang on to the Glam Light Wine palette. I put this one in the Shop My Stash because I wanted to see if I did in fact want to hang on to it, and it's beautiful. It's not the same formula as like the ice cream palette. I feel like the ice cream palette blends a little bit easier, but this is still beautiful, and the shimmers in this palette are stunning. This one I am going to declutter. This one is from BH Cosmetics. This is the Lobby Dune Prince palette. It's really pretty. There's some beautiful like neon tones in here, but I realize I never pull this palette. I think I've only used it maybe a couple of times since I bought it, and there's just no point in me hanging on to something that I'm not using when there's somebody else out there that I know will love it. So finally going to declutter this one. I will not be getting rid of my Sweet Shop palettes from BH Cosmetics. This is one of the best collections that they ever launched. Unfortunately, it is discontinued, but these palettes are absolutely stunning. First, we have Cherry on Top. Beautiful red tones in here. The shimmers in these particular palettes, my God, they are just above level. They are so beautiful. Then we have the Pistachio palette. This one is a green color story. I mean, look at that. And then the last one is the Orange Sorbet. There were, I think, 6 altogether. I only got the ones that I thought I was really going to use. So I only got like 3 out of the palettes that were launched, but these are beautiful. The 80s palettes from BH Cosmetics. Oh, well, I'm sorry, not the 80s palettes. These are the genre palettes from 2090s and 80s. I don't know. Do I want to keep hanging on to these? This is the 2000s Remix palette. I just like the whole theming of this collection. I haven't really been pulling these, but they are beautiful. So that's 2000s. I am going to go ahead and hang on to that. And then this one is the 80s. Really, really pretty too. Very, very colorful, very reminiscent of the 80s. I'm gonna go ahead and hang on to this one. And I guess I'll go ahead and hang on to the 90s Remix palette as well. That's what that one is looking like. All right, let's do this stack. We have the Princess and the Frog. This was the collaboration with I Love Revolution. I will not be getting rid of any of these palettes, but this is Tiana's. You have blush and highlighters on one side, eyeshadow palette on the other. The blushes in this palette are really, really pretty. This one I got from Hot Topic. I've had this palette forever, but it is still one of my favorite palettes in my collection. The formula is really, really beautiful. You open this one, It is a trifold palette. There's a little brush in here. I've never used that brush. I just keep it in there as for collecting purposes. But the shimmers in this palette are just absolutely stunning. I will not ever get rid of this one. I also will not be getting rid of my Hello Kitty ones. These are from Taste Beauty. I got both of these from Hot Topic as well. You have a Hello Kitty Kawaii palette. These are just so pretty. And then this one is just the Hello Kitty palette. I will not be getting rid of any of these either. This is Moana. This one also came from, I think all three of these came from Hot Topic. This is the Moana palette. I know I say so pretty a lot, but you know, it's facts. Tiana. This one is just gorgeous. I love the tones in here. And then this one is my Supernatural palette. I love Supernatural, the series. I love the Winchesters. And this palette is really, really pretty. I bought it strictly for collecting purposes, but I have enjoyed working with this palette as well. It is beautiful. I will not be getting rid of it. So far in this set, I've only gotten rid of one palette, but let's continue on. All of these are ColourPop palettes. These two right here. This one is from Star Wars. This is the C3PO palette, if I can speak. And then this one is the Little Ray of Sunshine matte palette. When I went to do this one, I was thinking, you know what? This would be a really cute companion for this one. And then I put them together. You guys, I was shook. They are the exact same color story. This one just happens to have shimmers in it. But as you can see, the tones, the shades, they're the same. Like they just took this palette and added some shimmers to it and called it the C3PO palette. Not very creative in my opinion. I will be hanging on to both. This one because it is a Star Wars themed palette. And then this one because these mattes are just really, really pretty. And I don't have a lot of like yellow themed palettes in my collection. Big Poppy. It's funny, I decluttered this one over the summer, but I realized that was stupid because I really do love it. So I went on ahead and I put it back into my collection. Beautiful toasty oranges. This one is stunning. I will not be getting rid of my Mandalorian or Darth Vader palettes either. The Darth Vader palette was one of my favorites. I love that red in the middle. The only thing that's really missing from this palette needs like a metallic black and like a really deep matte black. Those are the main things that are missing from this palette. I'm noticing that the sunlight is starting to fade. I brought my box light in here just in case I might need to turn that on. Then we have the Mandalorian. I love the beautiful cool tone neutrals in here. This palette is gorgeous. This one is one of my absolute favorites that ColourPop has ever launched. This is the High Tide palette. This one gives me serious mermaid vibes. I mean, look at that. The most beautiful teal greens ever. All the mattes are super buttery. The shimmers are very, very wet and metallic. I think they did such a great job with this particular color story. I will not be getting rid of it. The Wild Child palette. This one has really deep, rich, brown neutral tones. I haven't really been using it much, but these tones are just so pretty. I know that if I need tones like this is a palette that I'm going to reach for. This is a perfect neutral palette for women with deeper skin tones, or men, women, however you identify with deeper skin tones. This is a gorgeous palette. This one I am going to declutter. This is the Secret Admirer palette. This was part of their Valentine's Day collection this year. I really don't ever use this. I have other pink palettes that I love, including my one, the Sakura palette from Violet Voss. If I'm going to look for really pretty pinks, this palette is just not the one that I'm going to reach for. The Just My Luck palette. This one has some really pretty tones in it. I've thought about whether or not I want to declutter this one because I have some other greens in my collection, but this shade right here, this one and this one are super unique. I do not have shades like this, especially this one, in any palette, any of my other palettes. I mean, look at this. Just stunning. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and hang on to this. And I am going to take a pause and run back into the other room and get my makeup wipes. I just realized I forgot to bring them with me. Baby Got Peach. I have had this one for so long. There's like an avalanche of palettes falling over here. This is one of my first peachy tone palettes. I think this one is so pretty, but do I want to keep it? Do these tones still perform? Let's see. That one and that one. You know what? I think I am going to keep this one. Let me try this shimmer right here. Ooh. I don't know if you can even see that. Yeah, I'm going to hang on to this. Still performs, still beautiful. I'm going to hang on to all three of the Hocus Pocus ColourPop palettes. Actually, this is not one of those. It is these three. This was the very first one, Gather Round Sisters. I remember the internet went wild when this one was launched. I'm going to be hanging on to this one. This one right here, I kept the box for. I love the way that it's displayed in the packaging. This is what this palette is looking like. This is the biggest of the three. So pretty, so colorful. This was in collaboration with Hocus Pocus 2 that came out October, I think it was. This was the second year. This one is not my favorite, but you know, I am a completionist, so I will be hanging on to this. Let's see. Let's go ahead and finish off this ColourPop stack, and then maybe we'll start moving into something else. I will be hanging on to So Fly. I think this one is just such a beautiful color story. The shimmer in the middle, FYI, stunning. Sweet Talk. I have held on to this one for so long. This is the perfect like peachy spring palette, and it still performs. It is still beautiful. This shade right here is my absolute favorite. Every spring, this palette is one of the first ones that I reach for. It is stunning. Most definitely will not be decluttering my Baby Grogu palette, The Child. The color story in this one, you guys, it is so beautiful. Even if this were not a Star Wars themed palette, I would have snatched it up anyway just for this color story. These gorgeous warm tone greens, these shimmers in here, this silver up in the corner. This palette is just, the whole thing, it's everything. It's so beautiful. Sprinkle a little magic. This is Tinkerbell collaboration with ColourPop. I don't know if I actually showed you the cover. That's what it looks like. And then that is the color story. Not one of my favorite color stories, but I think the whole palette, the artwork and everything, is just a really beautiful palette altogether. So I'm going to hang on to this. I will also be hanging on to Blow and Smoke. This one is a gray black color story. And if I'm going to need a gray black, this is the palette I'm definitely going to reach for. So we're going to hang on to this. Even though I don't really use it much or pull from it much, there aren't that many opportunities that I have to use this type of a color story. I still want to hang on to this. And then we have some Disney palettes here. This one is the Disney Designer collaboration or Disney Designer collection, Midnight Masquerade. This palette goes along with those blushes and highlighters that I showed you in my other declutters. So pretty. This entire collection was stunning. And then my Mulan palette. To be real with you, I hate this formula. I think the formula in this palette just did not work very well. But Mulan is my favorite Disney princess. I love the overall artwork and theme of this palette, so we will be keeping it. If it were not a Mulan palette, I would have gotten rid of it a long time ago. And then we have the Disney Designer collection of all the signatures of the different princesses. I love this one. Let's do this stack and then we will do some more ColourPop. I have a lot of ColourPop palettes. Most of these here, I think, or rather some of them, are NOMAD palettes. I'm not going to go into detail about my NOMAD palettes. I did do a ranking. I will drop that link down in the description box below if you would like to see that. I ranked all my NOMAD palettes in that one. I will not be getting rid of any of them, just so you know. But this is the Winter Lodge Snow Lodge palette right there. The Hudson Valley palette, if you saw that ranking, you know this one was my top ranking for the Hudson Valley or the Nomad palettes. Just look at this. Beautiful. I went on ahead and turned on the box light. Starting to get a little bit dim in here. The Tiny Marvels palette, Sydney Grace and Mel Thompson. I will never declutter this one. Mel Thompson passed away this year. This palette is just so beautiful. It was her baby. My first experience with Sydney Grace shadows. They're stunning. I will not be getting rid of my Mulan palette. As I mentioned, Mulan is my favorite Disney princess. This was another one from the Revolution Princess collection. The only thing missing from this is a deep red. I don't know why there's not a deep red blush over here. These blushes don't really fit Mulan, but other than that, you know, it's beautiful. I bought it for, you know, the artwork. This one I am going to declutter. This is the Ace Beauty Nostalgia palette. Pretty sure this was from the first original formula. I know that they reformulated all of their original palettes, and this is the original formula. I might pick this one up in the newer formula, but this formula is just not my favorite, and I don't really pull this palette, so okay, we're gonna go ahead and let this one go. I'm also gonna hang on to my Isla Revolution Aristocats palette. This is Stay Sassy. I think I've used this palette maybe one time, but I bought it for collecting reasons. I just think this is so cute with the paw prints in the shadows. I will be hanging on to this. And then this one. This is the Elf Chipotle palette. This one they should have kept permanent in their collection, but it was a limited edition in collaboration with Chipotle. I don't eat Chipotle. I never really go there. I don't really care about Chipotle. But this palette, you guys, this is one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas and color stories that I've ever done. As you guys probably know, e.l.f. is very hit and miss their shadow formula is concerned. You could have one palette that's got just the most beautiful, stunning shadows, and the next one can just be crap. This one was beautiful. The only thing is that you have to keep the little slip because it has the names of the shadows on it. If you lose the slip, then you don't know the name. So that's the only thing that I would change, is I wish the shades were actually on the palette, but it's really pretty. Moving on to more ColourPop, we have the Powerpuff Girls collection, the Powerpuff Girls palette. I will not be decluttering this one either. That's just such a pretty palette. The Limoncello, I loved this palette when it first launched, and I will be hanging on to it. These tones in here, they're just so pretty. The shimmers in here, this one right here has a little bit of a shift to it. I will definitely be hanging on to my Star Wars palette. They launched this on May the 4th be with you day. Just love the artwork and the color story. This one is really, really pretty. And then we have the Misunderstood Disney Princess. This is the Villains palette. This goes with the Disney Designer collection. This one is all villains. This is, oh my god, the tones in here. This one right here, oh my god, it is stunning. I will be hanging on to my Sailor Moon Pretty Guardian palette. See, there's a little shiftiness going on in the cover. Oh my god, one of my shadows broke. When did that happen? I don't remember dropping this or hitting this or anything, but apparently it just shattered and fell all over the carpet. Yeah, that's going to be fun trying to clean that up. I'm gonna go ahead and keep it though, just for the packaging and stuff, but that is so weird. I wonder how long it's been like that. Oh well. Moving on to the ColourPop Lush Life palette, I will be hanging on to this one too. These gorgeous, bright, tropical shades in here. This palette is beautiful. And then the At Foresight, another Raw Beauty Christie collaboration. Packaging, I love Christie. I will not be getting rid of this palette. The shades and tones in here, they're beautiful. Then we have the Lust for Dusk from ColourPop. This is one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection. This color story is just so beautiful. It's perfect in the spring and the summer. Lots of cool tone neutrals in this palette. This shade right here, Quiet Storm, it's a little chunky, but when you blend it on your eyelid using like a glitter base or you wet the shadow, it's so pretty. Continuing on, I took a quick breather to vacuum up that shadow that was on the carpet. I just had this fear that I was going to actually grind it into the carpet, so I went ahead and got that cleaned up real quick. We have 2 more stacks and then we'll be done with part 1. I will be keeping my Encanto palette. This is the Alamar collaboration with the Disney movie Encanto. This is my first experience with an Alamar eyeshadow formula, and it's beautiful. Everything about this collection was beautiful. I will also be hanging on to this one. This is from Revolution London. This is the Forever Flawless Constellation palette. The formula in this one, it is not the best, not by any means, but this was a gift from my daughter. I think it was for Mother's Day. So yeah, I will not be getting rid of this. I'm hanging on to this for sentimental reasons, obviously. My Nissan Cup Noodle Eyeshadow Palette. I got this one from Hot Topic. I just thought this was such a cute idea with the little noodle bowl. I have used it a couple of times. The formula is really pretty. And then we have 2 more palettes from the I Love Revolution Disney Princess Collection. This one is Moana. I love this one. The bronziness and the blushes are so pretty. This one is called Born to Voyage. And then we have the Little Mermaid. This one is, if I can get it open, See the Possibilities. Really pretty too. 1 more stack to go. The ColourPop Blue Moon palette. I will be hanging on to this one. I don't really have many palettes that have like blues in them, and this is a pretty color story. I'm going to keep this one. I think the rest of these I will be keeping. This one is from Profusion, the Euphoria palette. This one is really, really pretty. I love the shimmers in here. The 10-pan palettes from Profusion are really, really pretty. Profusion can be hit or miss with their shadows, but all of the 10-pan ones that I've used have been really, really pretty. ColourPop in the Springs. This one is newer to my collection. This one was in the Halloween mystery box, I think it is. This one I'm still not sure about. I'm gonna play around with it a little bit longer before I make my decision. It does have like those orangey tones in it that you guys, you know, if you've been following me, you know I love orange. But like I said, I'm not 100% sure about this one yet, so I'm gonna try it out a little bit longer and then go from there. It may end up getting decluttered, but for now, I'm gonna keep it. And then my Dirty Martini palette from Glam Light. I'm going onto this one too. The shades in here, the shimmers in this, you guys. So creamy, so buttery, so shiny and wet looking. I'm also going to be hanging onto my Beauty Bay Love Notes palette. This was kind of like a Valentine's Day release. Some beautiful neutrals in here, some purples, some pinks. It's not my favorite out of all the Beauty Bay palettes that I have, but I do like it. And then we have my Malibu Glitz Sherbet Dreams palette. This is one of my favorites. I looked on the Shop Cherry website where I got it from, and I don't think it's available anymore, but this palette is stunning. All the different tones in here, the shimmers on this neutral side right here, these are gorgeous. Some of my favorites in my entire collection. This shimmer right here, so wet looking, so creamy and buttery. I love this palette. And of course, we are not getting rid of our Blend Bunny All Done Up palette. This is probably my favorite grungy neutral palette in my entire collection. I have pulled this palette so many times, used it for so many looks. This palette is gorgeous. I love it. And then we have our NYX Sabrina palette. I got this one strictly for, did I say NYX? Netflix Sabrina palette with NYX. I got this strictly for collecting purposes. This was in collaboration with the Sabrina, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina TV series. It looks like a spell book. Not the best formula as far as like shadows and blushes and all that are concerned, but I got this strictly for the packaging, so I will be keeping it. And then the rest of these are Nomad palettes. Like I said, I'm not going to go into super detail with these. I did that in my ranking video. But we have the American Parks palette. That's the color story for that one. The Tokyo Hirajuku, right there. The Cartagena Mexica palette, right there. The Paradise Islands palette. The Monteverde Cloud Forest palette. This is one of my favorite color stories of all my Nomad palettes. Stunning. And then our last Nomad palette and our last palette in this part is the Haunted Europe. This is such a pretty grungy color story. I love this one. That is it for part 1. There were 72 palettes in this section. I kept 69 and I only decluttered 3. But I think we kind of expected that. The ones that I keep in the shelves on the wall, most of those are collectible palettes. I don't really intend to ever get rid of most of them. That's going to be it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2.